Over the past month, the administration of President Donald Trump has implemented a series of bold trade policies and issued assertive statements that have significantly heightened tensions with both Canada and the European Union. Several international trade specialists, including analysts from the World Trade Organization and the Peterson Institute for International Economics, have cautioned that these actions could jeopardize long-established economic alliances. As a direct response, both Canada and the European Union have expressed their commitment to strengthening their economic ties, diversifying their trade networks, and presenting a united stance against U.S. protectionist measures. Beyond trade disputes, European leaders have also turned their focus to matters of defense and security as they adapt to the evolving policies of the Trump administration. France has scheduled a second high-level meeting on Wednesday to deliberate on security and defense strategies related to Ukraine, following an emergency summit previously initiated by President Emmanuel Macron. Unlike the previous gathering, this meeting will bring together not just Europe's largest nations, but also Norway, Canada, Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, the Czech Republic, Greece, Finland, Romania, Sweden, and Belgium. Insiders involved in planning have indicated that the event will be conducted in a hybrid format, allowing both in-person and virtual participation to ensure maximum involvement. France's broader goal appears to be the establishment of a more cohesive European stance, particularly in light of growing concerns regarding U.S. dependability and possible undisclosed negotiations with Russia. The economic relationship between Canada and the United States ranks among the most extensive and mutually advantageous in the world. Estimates suggest that trade between the two nations in goods and services reaches or surpasses $800 billion annually, equating to approximately $22 billion crossing the border daily. According to data from both the Office of the United States Trade Representative, USTR, and Global Affairs Canada, this vast exchange spans key industries such as automotive manufacturing, agriculture, technology, services, and, critically, energy. However, as discussions regarding potential tariffs on Canadian exports intensify, many experts warn that such actions could have severe consequences, not just for Canada, but also for the United States. One major concern revolves around America's considerable dependence on Canadian energy imports, particularly crude oil and electricity. Canada stands as the leading foreign supplier of crude oil to the United States, far surpassing other significant exporters such as Saudi Arabia and Mexico. According to estimates from the U.S. Energy Information Administration, EIA, Canada has consistently accounted for more than half of all U.S. crude oil imports in recent years. Much of this supply is transported through extensive cross-border pipeline networks, including the Keystone System, which channels fuel to refineries in the Midwest and along the Gulf Coast. Any disturbances resulting from tariffs or retaliatory actions could lead to price surges at fuel stations and disrupt supply chains for downstream petrochemical products. While Canadian electricity exports constitute a relatively small portion of total U.S. consumption on a national level, certain northern states are heavily reliant on Canadian power. Provinces such as Quebec, Manitoba, and British Columbia supply hydroelectric power across the border, ensuring a stable and cost-effective energy source for states in the Northeast, Upper Midwest, and Pacific Northwest. During peak demand seasons, particularly in winter and summer, this imported electricity plays a crucial role in preventing shortages and reducing reliance on more costly or higher emission power sources. If trade disputes escalate into broader retaliatory measures, these energy flows could be disrupted or become more expensive, straining regional power grids and leading to increased utility costs for consumers. The intricate supply chains that link the two economies further amplify the potential consequences of tariffs. For instance, automotive parts frequently cross the border multiple times before reaching final assembly, meaning that tariffs on these components could drive up costs for American car manufacturers and, ultimately, consumers. Similar interdependencies exist in the agricultural sector, where the regular movement of fruits, vegetables, and livestock between the two nations helps stabilize food prices and enables farmers to manage seasonal supply fluctuations. A key risk associated with imposing tariffs on Canadian energy or other industries is the likelihood of retaliatory measures from Canada. Historically, Canada has demonstrated a willingness to respond in kind to U.S. trade restrictions, potentially setting off a cycle of escalating duties that would disrupt critical imports on both sides. Experts from institutions such as the Peterson Institute for International Economics and the Canadian Chamber of Commerce warn that such retaliatory exchanges could lead to widespread supply chain disruptions, job losses, and increased living costs for citizens in both nations, outcomes that run counter to the objectives of either government. The relationship between energy security and political stability also plays a crucial role in maintaining economic confidence. If cooperation on cross-border energy trade deteriorates, it could unsettle markets and prompt both foreign and domestic investors to reassess projects that depend on predictable trade conditions. Business leaders emphasize that well-maintained infrastructure, consistent regulations, and minimal trade barriers form the foundation of the robust economic partnership between the United States and Canada. Undermining these elements could introduce prolonged uncertainty, potentially discouraging investment in crucial sectors such as pipeline development, manufacturing facilities, and other industries that generate employment. Ultimately, while tariffs are often presented as a means of safeguarding domestic industries, the reality is far more nuanced. Given the sheer magnitude of U.S. Canada trade and the strategic role of Canadian energy in the American market, any significant disruption could lead to serious economic repercussions for the United States itself. Analysts overwhelmingly advocate for a cooperative and balanced approach to resolving trade disputes, which would support economic growth, ensure stable energy supplies, and sustain strong consumer markets in both countries. In response to U.S. trade policies, both Canada and the European Union have prioritized deeper economic collaboration to decrease their dependence on the American market and uphold a rules-based international trading system. This initiative has gained renewed urgency since the United States imposed tariffs on steel and aluminum imports, a move that economists at the International Monetary Fund warn could trigger retaliatory responses and broader disruptions in global trade patterns. A key framework facilitating this strengthened economic cooperation is the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, CETA, which has been in provisional effect since 2017. This agreement is structured to eliminate tariffs on nearly 98% of goods and services traded between Canada and the EU. According to the latest data from the European Commission, bilateral trade between these two partners has surged by approximately 65% since the agreement's implementation. Beyond promoting trade in goods, CETA also simplifies the mutual recognition of professional credentials in fields such as engineering and architecture. Government officials on both sides, including Canadian ministers in Ottawa and EU trade representatives in Brussels, stress the importance of fully leveraging the benefits of CETA. They highlight the necessity of ensuring that small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, can navigate the complexities of transatlantic trade. Business support organizations such as the Canadian Chamber of Commerce and Eurochambre have developed guides and training programs aimed at helping SMEs expand their exports under CETA. This increased focus on international economic partnerships is particularly significant, given that the United States accounts for nearly 75% of Canada's total export market. Canadian policymakers are actively working to reduce the country's economic vulnerability to fluctuations in U.S. trade policies. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's administration has set a bold target of increasing exports to non-U.S. markets by 50% by 2025. To achieve this, Canada has been actively pursuing new trade agreements with nations such as Indonesia and Ecuador, broadening its presence in emerging markets across Asia and Latin America. According to economists from the Royal Bank of Canada, expanding trade partnerships could serve as a safeguard for Canadian exporters against potential tariff impositions or shifts in policy direction from Washington. Similarly, European Commission officials view the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, CETA, as part of a larger EU strategy to diversify trade relations, complementing existing or pending agreements with countries such as Japan, Vietnam, and other key international partners. Another crucial element of this growing collaboration involves the establishment of secure supply chains for critical minerals. Resources such as lithium, cobalt, nickel, and various rare earth elements are indispensable for modern battery manufacturing and renewable energy technologies. Both Canada and the European Union have expressed a mutual interest in decreasing reliance on suppliers like China for these vital raw materials. Government agencies such as Natural Resources Canada and the European Battery Alliance are actively evaluating opportunities for joint initiatives in mining, refining, and recycling these essential minerals. Potential projects may include collaborative research efforts, shared financing of extraction ventures, and agreements aimed at facilitating the transfer of technology between the two regions. Alongside these developments, discussions are also underway regarding energy security, particularly the potential for infrastructure projects that would improve the efficiency of Canadian oil and gas exports to European refineries. The International Energy Agency has highlighted that as Europe continues its transition away from reliance on Russian gas, the importance of stable partnerships with North American energy suppliers is increasing. In reaction to U.S. tariffs on products such as steel and aluminum, both Canada and the EU have adopted a coordinated stance. Officials from both regions have criticized these tariffs as being inconsistent with internationally recognized trade regulations, reaffirming their commitment to upholding a fair and transparent rules-based system under the World Trade Organization, WTO. While discussions are still ongoing regarding specific countermeasures, trade officials have indicated that potential responses may include proportional counter-tariffs or seeking legal resolution through WTO dispute mechanisms. From a global trade governance perspective, this alignment suggests that longtime allies are prepared to challenge U.S. policies that they view as destabilizing. Analysts at the Brookings Institution have noted that unified action from Canada and the EU could pressure Washington into reassessing its trade strategy, especially if resistance emerges from multiple major economies simultaneously. In a national address, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau responded to President Donald Trump's decision to impose a 25% tariff on Canadian exports. Trudeau strongly condemned the tariffs, calling them entirely unjustified and a clear violation of the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA. Trade specialists from institutions such as the Canadian Chamber of Commerce and the Peterson Institute for International Economics have warned that such trade barriers not only strain diplomatic relations, but also disrupt North American supply chains that are critical to industries such as automotive manufacturing and agriculture. Trudeau emphasized that these tariffs would negatively impact both Canadians and Americans, given the deep economic interdependence between the two nations, particularly in manufacturing and energy sectors. He announced that Canada would introduce reciprocal tariffs of equal value on select U.S. goods, encouraging Canadian consumers to prioritize domestic products in response. Drawing on historical trade conflicts, Trudeau acknowledged that retaliatory measures were regrettable, but necessary to protect national economic interests. He concluded by cautioning that while these measures would have an impact on Canadians, they would also result in tangible consequences for American workers and consumers. During a private event, reporters from Reuters and other media outlets captured audio of Trudeau referencing remarks made by President Trump regarding the idea of Canada becoming the 51st U.S. state. Trudeau remarked that such statements were real and tied to Canada's abundant natural resources, including timber, oil, and critical minerals. International relations scholars at organizations such as the Wilson Center have noted that rhetoric surrounding the informal annexation of Canada has occasionally surfaced in political discourse between the two nations, often as political posturing. However, Trudeau's acknowledgement that President Trump may have seriously entertained such an idea has sparked concerns over Canadian sovereignty and control of its natural resources. His remarks underscored the seriousness of the issue, highlighting how even seemingly offhand comments can influence diplomatic relations. Speaking in Brussels alongside European Commission leaders at a joint press conference, Prime Minister Trudeau warned that the newly imposed U.S. tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum would not only harm employment opportunities in Canada, but also in the United States. He drew comparisons to the trade barriers implemented in 2018, which, according to studies conducted by the U.S. Congressional Budget Office and various Canadian economic research institutions, resulted in approximately 75,000 job losses in the United States. To illustrate the potential economic fallout, Trudeau pointed out that industries on both sides of the border are closely interconnected. Essential goods such as automotive components and raw materials frequently cross the border multiple times before reaching their final stage of production. He reiterated that if the tariffs were fully enforced, Canada would consider implementing proportionate countermeasures, emphasizing the importance of defending Canadian workers' interests. At the Invictus Games in Vancouver, Trudeau adopted a different tone, focusing on unity and camaraderie. In his address, he paid tribute to the resilience of the participating athletes, military personnel who have suffered injuries, illnesses, or other challenges, and celebrated their achievements. Despite the ongoing diplomatic tensions, he underscored the enduring friendship between Canada and the United States, highlighting how their shared history and cultural ties bind them together. He stressed that while political disagreements may arise, they should not overshadow the strong personal and institutional relationships that Canadians and Americans have maintained over the years. His speech at the Invictus Games served as a reminder of the core values of perseverance, mutual respect, and collaboration that both nations uphold on the global stage. The urgency of these discussions has increased following U.S.-Russia peace talks held in Saudi Arabia. The negotiations, led by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, notably excluded representatives from Ukraine and key European nations, a decision that many European leaders perceive as sidelining their interests. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has openly criticized these back-channel discussions, asserting that any agreement lacking direct Ukrainian participation cannot be considered legitimate. Meanwhile, European officials have expressed concerns that Washington's approach may be shaped more by electoral considerations in the United States rather than prioritizing NATO security commitments and Ukraine's sovereignty. France, under President Macron's leadership, has long been an advocate for a more independent European defense policy. French officials, along with other proponents of strategic autonomy, argue that while NATO remains a vital element of European security, the continent must not rely solely on American commitments. As a result, EU institutions have developed initiatives such as the European Defense Fund and the Permanent Structured Cooperation (PESCO) framework to coordinate joint military projects and defense investments. The upcoming meeting in France is expected to address strategies for strengthening Europe's collective defense capabilities. Discussions will likely include collaborative research into next-generation military technologies, standardized intelligence sharing protocols, and financial commitments to expand defense budgets among both EU and NATO member states. While Ukraine's potential NATO membership remains a complex and sensitive issue, some European leaders have proposed interim measures, such as security pacts or defense guarantees backed by European governments. Despite these efforts to foster unity, differences in approach persist among European nations. Eastern European states, including Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, and Poland, advocate for a firmer stance toward Russia, emphasizing the importance of deterrence and direct military support. In contrast, Western European countries such as Germany and Italy favor a more measured approach, emphasizing diplomatic engagement and economic stability. Analysts at the European Council on Foreign Relations note that these internal divisions can pose challenges to decision-making, particularly on high-stakes defense matters. President Macron's initiative to host an expanded second meeting reflects France's ambition to play a central role in shaping Europe's security policy. By broadening the discussion to include additional EU members and Canada, France aims to establish a more unified European position, one that is less susceptible to sudden shifts in U.S. foreign policy. That's all for this video. Thank you for tuning in. If you found this content valuable or thought-provoking, please consider showing your support by liking the video and subscribing to our channel. Your engagement is deeply appreciated. You can also check out another video from our channel, now appearing on your screen.